First contact and betrayal. The void of space stretched endlessly beyond the viewport of the UES Pathfinder, humanity's first diplomatic vessel capable of faster-than-light travel. Captain Alina Reyes stood with her hands clasped behind her back, dark eyes fixed on the approaching space station. It resembled a massive crystalline snowflake, each delicate arm housing different atmospheric conditions for the myriad species that made up the galactic hegemony. "Quite the welcome party," remarked Commander Jackson, nodding toward the escort of sleek vessels that had intercepted them at the edge of the system. Their surfaces gleamed with an iridescent coating that seemed to bend light around them. "They're not escorts, David," Alina replied quietly. "They're making sure we don't try anything stupid." Humanity had stumbled onto the galactic stage with characteristic clumsiness. Only 15 years after developing rudimentary FTL technology, a human mining vessel had accidentally jumped into a restricted hegemony trade route. The diplomatic fallout had been immediate, with the hegemony demanding formal meetings to assess humanity's place in the galactic order. "We're receiving docking instructions," announced Communications Officer Lin. "Central Hub, Adaptable Atmosphere Section. Take us in slow and steady," Alina ordered. "Let's not give them any reason to think we're a threat." The truth was, humanity was no threat, at least not militarily. The hegemony had been traversing the stars for over 12,000 years. Earth's modest fleet of 27 starships was less than a rounding error in their vast armadas. What humanity did have was potential, and that had caught the hegemony's attention. As the Pathfinder eased into its docking cradle, Alina addressed her crew. "Remember your training. No sudden movements. Follow protocol, and for heaven's sake, try not to smile with your teeth showing. Half the species out there consider it a death threat." The diplomatic team consisted of Alina, UN Ambassador Okonkwo, and Dr. Patel, Earth's leading xenobiologist. They were met at the airlock by a towering figure with translucent blue skin and 4 arms. Each hand ended in 7 delicate fingers. "I am Sorax, third envoy to the High Council," the alien stated, its translator rendering the clicks and whistles into flat English. "You will follow. The Council awaits." "We're honored by such prompt attention," Ambassador Okonkwo replied with a slight bow. "The people of Earth look forward to peaceful relations with the hegemony." Sorax made no response, simply turning and gliding down the corridor. As they walked, Alina noticed other aliens watching from side passages and adjoining rooms. Some appeared almost humanoid, while others defied comprehension. Masses of tentacles, crystalline structures, or beings of what seemed like pure energy contained in specialized suits. "They're curious about us," Dr. Patel whispered. "Most new species are discovered as pre-FTL civilizations and gradually introduced to galactic society over centuries. We're something of an anomaly." The central chamber of the station was a vast amphitheater. Hundreds of representatives from different species occupied tiered seating around a central platform, where 7 beings sat in ornate chairs. The High Council of the Hegemony. The central figure, clearly the leader, had skin like burnished gold and eyes that seemed to contain galaxies. "I am Supreme Arbiter Genfar," it announced, voice reverberating through the chamber without apparent amplification. "We welcome the representatives of Earth." Ambassador Okonkwo stepped forward and delivered a carefully prepared speech about cooperation, mutual respect, and humanity's desire to learn from the advanced civilizations of the hegemony. Alina noticed several council members exchanging glances during particular portions. When Okonkwo finished, Genfar leaned forward. "Your words are promising. However, the hegemony has encountered many species throughout our history. Some develop along acceptable paths. Others become problematic. I assure you, Arbiter, humanity seeks only peaceful coexistence," Okonkwo replied. "Indeed, yet our preliminary studies of your species show concerning traits. Your adaptability is unusual. Your capacity for violence, remarkable. Your history is stained with constant warfare. We've overcome those tendencies," Okonkwo insisted. Have you? Another council member spoke, this one resembling an insectoid with compound eyes that reflected the chamber's light. Our observation outposts have monitored your communications. You maintain military forces. You conduct weapons research. Your first ventures into space were driven by competition between your nation-states. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. Observation outposts. How long had the hegemony been watching Earth? Genthar raised a hand for silence. You will be assessed and assigned an appropriate classification within the hegemony. Until then, your species will remain under quarantine. No ships may leave your solar system. With respect, Arbiter, Elena spoke up, ignoring Okonkwo's warning glance. Earth has already established outposts beyond our solar system. We have mining operations in the Alpha Centauri system and a research colony on Proxima, with over 40,000 civilians. The chamber erupted in murmurs. Genfar's eyes narrowed. This was not in our records. You have expanded beyond your system without authorization. We weren't aware authorization was required, Elena replied carefully. We had no contact with the hegemony until recently. A third council member, a being composed of what looked like flowing mercury, spoke in tones of alarm. Supreme Arbiter, this confirms the Vigilance Directive's concerns. The humans have displayed exactly the aggressive expansion patterns that led to the Scourge Wars. Elena didn't like where this was heading. Our colonies are peaceful. You will return to your vessel, Genfar interrupted. The Council must deliberate on this new information. Remain docked until summoned. Back aboard the Pathfinder, Ambassador Okonkwo paced the conference room. This is a disaster. They see us as a potential threat. Can you blame them? Dr. Puddle replied. From their perspective, we've expanded at an alarming rate compared to other species. We need to prepare for all possibilities, Elena said grimly, including hostile action. She turned to her communications officer. Send an encrypted message to Earth Command. Priority Alpha. 3 days later, they were summoned back to the council chamber. The atmosphere had changed. Fewer representatives were present, and security drones hovered at the entrances. Zenfar spoke without preamble. The Council has made its determination. Humanity presents an unacceptable risk to galactic stability. Your rapid development, natural aggression, and uncontrolled expansion cannot be permitted to continue. Ambassador Okonkwo stepped forward. Supreme Arbiter, we came in peace. We still desire peaceful relations. Peace requires compliance, Genfar cut him off. The hegemony has maintained order for 12 millennia by containing disruptive elements. Your species will be contained. Elena felt her blood run cold. What exactly does contained mean? Your colony on Proxima will be removed as a demonstration. Your technology will be restricted. Your development will be guided along appropriate channels. This is the most merciful option. The Vigilance Directive recommended complete sterilization of your worlds. Before Elena could respond, her communicator buzzed. It was the Pathfinder's first officer, his voice urgent. Captain, we're picking up massive energy signatures near Proxima Centauri. A hegemony battle fleet just dropped out of FTL. The human delegation stared in horror at the Council. You've already sent ships, Elena demanded. There are 40,000 civilians on that colony. The decision was made, Genfar stated flatly. Your species must understand the consequences of defiance. This is genocide, Okonkwo shouted, diplomatic restraint forgotten. This is order, replied Genfar. You will remain here while the operation is completed. Then you will return to Earth with our terms for your species' continued existence. With a subtle nod from Elena, Commander Jackson lunged forward, tackling the nearest security drone. In the ensuing chaos, the human delegation fought their way out of the chamber and raced for the docking bay. Alarms blared throughout the station. All hands, emergency departure. Elena shouted into her communicator as they ran. Disengage docking clamps on my mark. They barely made it aboard before hegemony security forces reached the bay. The Pathfinder tore free of its moorings, shields absorbing the initial barrage of station defenses. "Get us out of this system," Elena ordered, strapping into the captain's chair. "Maximum FTL as soon as we're clear." As the stars stretched into lines around them, Elena stared at the tactical display showing the hegemony fleet at Proxima Centauri. They were too late to warn the colony. "Set course for Earth," she said grimly. "We need to prepare for war." When the Pathfinder emerged from FTL near Earth, they found the planet on high alert. The encrypted warning had been received, and Earth's modest fleet was mobilizing. But the news from Proxima Centauri was worse than they feared. The hegemony fleet had annihilated the colony, reduced the planet's surface to molten slag. 40,000 lives extinguished to make a point. In an emergency session of the United Nations, Elena presented everything they had learned about the hegemony. The debate was brief. For the first time in human history, Earth stood truly united. "They expect us to surrender," said UN Secretary-General Cardoso, addressing the Assembly. "They expect us to accept their guidance and restrictions, to submit to their version of galactic order." He paused, looking at the faces of representatives from every nation. "They do not understand humanity. We have never submitted to tyranny. We have never accepted extinction. We will not start now." The assembly erupted in applause and shouts of approval. "We cannot match their technology," Elena cautioned when the noise died down. "Their ships outnumber ours thousands to one." "Then we won't fight like they expect," replied General Zhang of the newly formed Earth Defense Force. "If they want a war, we'll give them one unlike anything their precious hegemony has ever experienced." As the meeting continued, strategic plans formed. Earth would not fight conventionally. They would strike from shadows, learn from each encounter, adapt as only humans could. The hegemony had made a critical mistake. They had left humanity no choice but to fight, and nothing was more dangerous than a human with no options. On the edge of the solar system, automated beacons were deployed, broadcasting the simple message on all frequencies in every known language of the hegemony. "You came to our home. You destroyed our colony. You sought to enslave us. Remember this moment. Remember that you started this war. And know that humanity will never surrender." The first human war had begun. The empire trembles. 6 months after the destruction of Proxima Colony, the hegemony realized their mistake. They had expected submission. Instead, they got Captain Reyes. Now Admiral Reyes, Elena stood on the bridge of the EDF Vengeance, a ship that hadn't existed half a year ago. Earth's scientists and engineers had worked miracles, reverse engineering captured hegemony technology and combining it with human ingenuity. The result was a fleet of hybrid vessels, not as powerful as hegemony warships, but more versatile, more unpredictable. "Status report," she ordered, watching the tactical display where a hegemony supply station orbited a gas giant. "Their 5th target this month. All ships in position," reported her XO, Commander Alvarez. "Jamming systems ready. Boarding teams standing by." Elena nodded. "Begin the operation." Unlike the hegemony, which relied on overwhelming force and superior technology, human tactics emphasized stealth, precision, and psychological impact. They never attacked the same way twice. They never engaged in direct fleet battles. They struck like ghosts and vanished, leaving confusion and fear in their wake. Today's target housed technology Earth desperately needed. Advanced reactor designs that could give their ships the range to strike deeper into hegemony territory. "Deploying electronic warfare packages," announced Lieutenant Choi from Tactical. The devices, another human innovation, transmitted signals that mimicked the signature of a spatial anomaly, confusing hegemony sensors. Under this cover, 3 human ships approached the station, while the rest of the fleet remained hidden behind the gas giant's largest moon. The station's defenses activated too late. "They're scrambling response vessels," Alvarez reported. "Let them come," Elena replied calmly. "Spring the trap." As the hegemony patrol ships moved to intercept the apparent raid, The main body of the human fleet emerged from hiding, cutting off their retreat. The battle was brief and one-sided. Boarding teams away, Alvarez announced. Engineering teams ready for salvage operations. Within 2 hours, the station had been stripped of valuable technology and data. The human fleet prepared to depart, leaving behind the station's crew in escape pods. Incoming transmission from the station commander, Lieutenant Choi announced. The view screen activated, showing a Xaraxian officer, the same species as the envoy they'd met months ago. Its blue skin had paled to an almost white hue, a sign of extreme stress. "You cannot win this war," the commander stated. "The hegemony has ruled for 12,000 years. Our resources are limitless." Elena leaned forward. "Then why are your supply lines stretched so thin? Why did your response fleet have outdated shield configurations? Why is the Vigilance Directive demanding more resources from the outer systems?" The Caraxian's eyes widened. "How could you know? We learn. We adapt. It's what humans do." Elena smiled, careful to keep her lips closed. "Tell your Supreme Arbiter that humanity is just getting started." As the human fleet jumped to FTL, Elena reviewed their next objective. The intelligence recovered from the station confirmed what their covert operatives had already discovered. The hegemony was facing internal struggles. Several subjected species were watching the human resistance with interest. Potential allies. In a secret meeting facility hidden in the asteroid belt of an unmarked star system, Admiral Reyes met with representatives from 3 species: the Novan, insectoid beings who had been relegated to mining operations for centuries; the Ketheri, a race of empaths whose worlds had been turned into pleasure resorts for hegemony elites; and the Vrax, silicon-based entities who had been fighting the guerrilla war against hegemony forces for decades. "The hegemony calls us terrorists," growled Vracanar, the Vrax leader, his crystalline body refracting light as he moved. "They hunt our ships, bombard our hideouts, and tell the galaxy we are dangerous extremists. Because they fear you," Elena replied, "just as they fear humanity. They recognize something in us that they couldn't control." "Your resistance has inspired many," said Shala, the Ketheri representative, her feathered crest rising with emotion. "For the first time in generations, my people speak of freedom. Separately, none of us can defeat the hegemony," Elena continued. "Together, we have a chance, not just to fight, but to change the very structure of galactic society." The alliance formed that day would alter the course of the war. The Novans provided access to critical resources and manufacturing facilities. The Ketheri, with their presence throughout hegemony pleasure worlds, became the perfect spy network. The Vrax shared their centuries of experience fighting the hegemony's overwhelming forces. As the rebellion spread, the High Council of the hegemony faced a crisis unlike any in their millennia of rule. Across multiple sectors, ships were disappearing, outposts going dark, subjected worlds growing restless, and at the center of it all, humans. In an emergency session, Supreme Arbiter Zenfar addressed the full council. "The human problem has become intolerable," the Arbiter declared. "They do not fight as civilized beings. They do not respect the proper conduct of warfare. They strike without warning, disappear without trace, and worst of all, they share our technology with lesser species. We should have sterilized their worlds immediately," hissed the representative of the Vigilance Directive. "As I recommended." "Your recommendation is noted," Zenfar replied coldly. "Yet the opportunity has passed. Their homeworld is now too heavily defended, and they have dispersed their population to hidden colonies throughout multiple sectors. Perhaps negotiation," began another counselor, only to be interrupted by derisive sounds from several others. "They refuse all communication except to state their terms. Complete independence, reparations for Proxima Colony, and the liberation of all enslaved species," Zenfar said. "Terms that would destroy the very foundation of our society." The debate raged for days, but in the end, the decision was inevitable. The hegemony would commit its main battle fleet, thousands of warships drawn from central defense duties to crush the human-led rebellion once and for all. What they didn't know was that this was exactly what Admiral Reyes had been waiting for. As the massive hegemony armada gathered near the core systems, preparing for a decisive campaign, human intelligence operatives and their allies were already in position. Through the Ketheri network, they had obtained the fleet's planned route, jump coordinates, and command codes. "They've taken the bait," Elena told her war council aboard the new Earth flagship, EDF Defiance. "They're committing everything to this offensive, leaving the core systems vulnerable. It's still suicide to engage them directly," cautioned General Zhang. "Even with our allies, we're outnumbered 10 to 1. "We won't engage them," Elena replied, a dangerous smile forming. "We're going to let them chase shadows while we strike at their heart." The plan was audacious. While the hegemony fleet pursued false intelligence about a major rebel base, a joint strike force of human, Novan, Ketheri, and Vrax ships would jump directly to Zenthar Prime, the hegemony's capital world. Not to conquer it, but to deliver a message the entire galaxy would hear. As the hegemony fleet departed for its grand offensive, Zenthar returned to Zenthar Prime, confident in the coming victory. The Supreme Arbiter was in the Grand Assembly, addressing representatives from throughout the hegemony about the imminent end of the human rebellion, when the unthinkable happened. The planetary defense grid, supposedly impenetrable, went offline. Emergency alarms blared throughout the capital city, and in the sky above, dozens of ships appeared, human, Novan, Ketheri, and Vrax, flying in formation. Before the defense forces could respond, the rebel fleet broadcast on all frequencies, overriding every communication system on the planet. On screens throughout the capital, Admiral Elena Reyes appeared. "People of the hegemony," she began, her voice calm and measured. "For 12,000 years, your leaders have told you they bring order and peace to the galaxy. They have told you that species like mine, like the Novans, the Ketheri, the Vraxes, and countless others, must be controlled for the greater good." The image shifted to show footage of Proxima Colony before its destruction, humans and alien visitors working together, children playing, a society of cooperation rather than domination. "This is what your leaders destroyed," Elena continued as the footage changed to show the hegemony bombardment. "Not because we threatened them, but because we refused to be enslaved." In the Grand Assembly, chaos erupted as representatives realized the extent of the breach. Zenthar, for the first time in centuries, felt fear. Elena's broadcast continued, now showing evidence of hegemony atrocities against numerous species, secret council meetings discussing the management of subjected worlds, contingency plans for species cleansing operations. "Today, we could destroy this world, as your leaders destroyed Proxima," Elena said. "But that is not our way. Instead, we offer a choice." The rebel fleet began landing operations, not to attack, but to distribute evidence of hegemony crimes and proposals for a new galactic covenant, one based on cooperation rather than subjugation. "Your battle fleet is currently pursuing a phantom," Elena explained. "By the time they return, dozens of worlds will have heard our message. The choice is yours. Continue a war you cannot win, or help us build something better." As the broadcast ended, the rebel ships departed as suddenly as they had arrived, leaving Zenthar Prime in turmoil. The carefully maintained narrative of 12 millennia had been shattered in a single day. In the weeks that followed, the hegemony began to fracture. Long subjected species rose in open rebellion. Worlds on the periphery declared independence. Even among the founding species, questions arose about the leadership's decisions and the true history of the hegemony. When the main battle fleet finally returned to Zenthar Prime, they found not a defeated rebel force, but an empire in disarray. Some ships immediately defected. Others simply stood down, refusing to fire on former hegemony worlds. 6 months after the Zenthar Prime operation, representatives from over 200 worlds, formerly of the hegemony and beyond, gathered on a neutral space station to sign the Galactic Covenant. At its core were principles that humanity had been striving toward for centuries: self-determination, cooperation, mutual defense, and respect for diversity. Admiral Elena Reyes, now serving as Earth's representative to the new Galactic Assembly, watched as the document was ratified. Next to her stood Vracanar, Shala, and other leaders of the Alliance. The hegemony believed they could break humanity, Elena said quietly. Instead, they united us with the galaxy. Your species fought differently than any the hegemony had encountered, Vracanar observed, his crystalline form shifting in what Elena had learned was amusement, not just with weapons, but with ideas. Ideas are humanity's greatest strength, Elena replied, and our greatest weakness. We'll need your wisdom to ensure this covenant lasts. And we will need your adaptability, Shala added, her empathic ability sensing the mix of hope and caution in the assembly. Already, the former hegemony worlds whisper warnings to each other about humans. How dangerous you are, how unpredictable. Elena smiled. Good. Let them remember that the first human war began because they thought they could conquer us. And let them remember how it ended, not with their destruction, but with their liberation. Throughout the galaxy, a new saying began to spread among the former hegemony species, usually whispered with a mixture of fear and respect. If you value your empire, never provoke the humans. If you must fight them, run. The first human war had ended. The age of the Galactic Covenant had begun. And humanity, the upstart species that had shaken the foundations of a 12,000-year empire, found itself with a new reputation, not as conquerors, but as liberators. Not as savages, but as the spark that had ignited a revolution. It was not the last role humanity would play in galactic affairs, but it was perhaps the most important. For in breaking the chains of the hegemony, humans had finally found their place among the stars.